All right, so good evening. Thanks to those of you who are joining live, and for those of you watching the recording, I appreciate it. Welcome to Holding Government Accountable. My name is Dr. Josh Franco, Assistant Professor of Political Science at Cuyamaca College. Welcome to our 15th workshop of this semester. So recall that the Holding Government Accountable is a workshop series that's focused on how individuals inside and outside of government hold it accountable to the Constitution, federal state laws, and regulations. This is a series of 16 30-minute workshops that we're holding every Wednesday from 7:30 to 8 p.m. And this week, we're going to be talking about holding local governments accountable. In the past weeks, we've talked about a range of subjects, and you can obviously check out the recordings at your leisure. So with that, let's go ahead and jump to that week. Okay. And I'm going to go ahead and go to full screen mode. Great. So by the end of this workshop, you'll be able to do the following. First is define local governments. Next is describe the organization of a city or county or special district government. Third is to identify one local government that you would want to offer a public comment to about an issue you care about. You'll be able to define LAFCOs, and then finally describe the role of county civil grand juries in the oversight of local governments. So what's local government, right? The definitional question. Well, local government is an umbrella term that includes county, city, special districts, and school board governments. Local governments are the entities that consist of elected officials, appointed officials, and bureaucracies that discuss and adopt local laws and regulations that affect the day-to-day lives of residents within specific geographic areas or regions. And local governments have some autonomy, but they're governed by state and federal laws and regulations. So what we're going to do next is go through several examples of local governments to kind of fix this concept in our minds through real world examples. So the first one I'd like to point out is the County of San Diego. And what we'll be doing is looking at organizational charts just so you get a sense of how they're organized. And let me make sure my pin's working. Awesome. So here we see an organizational chart on the left-hand side. At the top are the citizens of the County of San Diego. And then the Board of Supervisors, there's 5 of them who are elected on 4-year cycles. So I'll put 5 individuals. And then the Board of Supervisors will hire a Chief Administrative Officer, or a CAO. This CAO is a appointed official. They're a public servant. They're typically well-regarded, highly trained, and have deep knowledge of county government, state laws, and local laws. Most of the times, this is the capstone of most people's career in public service and local government. Under the CAO, you'll have, at least in County San Diego, you have a public safety group, a health and human services agency, a land use environmental group, and finance and general government group. And within those, you'll have different departments or organizations. So like, for example, under public safety group, we have child support services, district attorney, and the medical examiner. Under health and human services, you'll have aging and independence services, child welfare services, and housing and community development services. On the land use environment group, you'll have agriculture, weights, and measures. And I just want to make a point to pull this out here. For those of you who are still driving internal combustion engine cars and having to purchase gas, which we know has hit $6 in the county and $4 nationwide as of this week, you might notice something when you're getting gas from the pump, which is you'll see a seal. It says the seal, and it'll say agriculture weights and measures of the County of San Diego. So that is inspected by the county to make sure that that is working properly, so it dispenses the proper amount of gas. So when you are filling your car up with gasoline and you're paying for a gallon of gas, that it's actually a gallon of gas. So I just want to draw a pump, gas pump here. So you know that. Other things like environmental health, planning and development services. And then finally, under finance and general government, the assessor, recorder, county clerk, civil service commission, county communications office, the grand jury, which we'll talk more about in a little bit, and registrar of voters, and the treasurer, tax collector. So for those who are property owners, every year you'll get property tax bill in the mail, and either you got to pay it direct, or if you got a mortgage, your mortgage company will send the payment to the county, or you send it to the mortgage company and then they'll send it to the county. So that's a breakdown of the county of San Diego. Next, let's look at the city of El Cajon. So here, the city of El Cajon, again, the organizational chart we're looking at is at the top are the citizens. The citizens will elect council members and a mayor. And then from there, there'll be a city manager. The city manager is like the chief administrative officer at the county level, but they are responsible for the city's governing or the city's functioning. On the side, you have the city attorney. They're kind of equivalent with the city manager, just not as much responsibility. The city manager is the person kind of running the government, while the city attorney is the legal counsel for the city government. Under the city manager, you have a clerk, community development, finance, fire, human resources, infotech, police, public works, and recreation. And in addition to the city manager doing their work, you also have these boards and commissions that are highlighted in yellow. So you have folks who are responsible for the Giuseppe Field Development Council, that's over by the airfield, the Heartland Communications Facility Authority, the Heartland Fire Training Facilities Authority, Personnel Commission, Planning Commission, Public Safety Facility Financing Oversight, and the Veterans Commission. And I'll make a note here that the most powerful of these commissions is typically considered the Planning Commission, because what happens is anytime there's an issue with zoning, and zoning is deciding a land use, so land use decisions. This can also include, like, say a business wants to expand to have outdoor seating. Well, the Planning Commission will typically review that unless there's some kind of blanket authority to have that approved at the city manager's level. But the Planning Commissions will oversee any major or minor zoning changes, decisions, variances, etc. And they will make recommendations to the city council on those land use decisions. And so they're typically viewed as a very powerful commission in any city government in California because of the role that they play in approving or not approving, or in this case, recommending or not recommending zoning, land use, or other kind of building decisions in the city limits. So this is the city of El Cajon. And most cities are similarly organized. There might have some differences in maybe a department or agency, but for the most part, these are the major way that cities are organized. Okay. Next, we're going to take a look at the Helix Water District. So this is an example of a special district, which I'll write up here. Special district example. And we're saying, okay, what's this about? So at the top are Helix customers. Now you might notice, well, wait a minute. For the county and for the city, it was the citizens of the county or the city, but here it's the customers. Yes. So when it comes to the Helix Water District or other water districts, typically your customers are also your voters, who get to decide, in this case, who the board of directors are. And then the board of directors will hire a general manager. The general manager, again, is like the top administrative officer for this special district. And under them at a water district, they'll have someone who's a director of water quality and system operations, director of operations, director of engineering, director of administrative services. So for example, the director of water quality and systems operations will look at water quality, so the labs and customer service, water treatment facilities, so plant operations, plant maintenance, cross connection control, instrumentation, and SCADA, hazardous materials response, system ops, and then in this case, to oversee Lake Jennings campground and recreational elements. The director of operations, will look at field ops, so distribution system operations and maintenance, street improvement coordination, meter lateral maintenance, replacements, etc. So for example, you might have been driving around El Cajon or parts of the area, and you might notice folks like these big blue pipes and construction workers like trenching through the street. And what they're doing is they're replacing water pipes that might have aged or corroded. They also might be doing gas lines depending, but it wouldn't be Helix Water District necessarily doing that. It'd be San Diego Gas and Electric. But if you're seeing signs that say, hey, this is a project of Helix Water District, well, they're replacing pipes. And this is a major component of the work that they do. And you have a director of engineering who looks at engineering and design, capital improvement programs, contracts administration, right of way and environmental issues, engineering analysis and tech support, and then construction of those things. So whenever there is construction being done on behalf of Helix Water District, it's overseen by the director of engineering, who's then overseen by the general manager, who's then overseen by the board of directors, and presumably overseen by people who pay into the Helix water system. And last, you have director of administrative services. So they deal with like, payroll, budgeting, tech, information tech, public affairs, things like that. So here's yet another example of a local government, in this case, a special district government. Next, we're going to take a look at the San Diego Unified School District. And here we'll see that at the top, where's my pen? It's disappeared. Here it goes. You have the Board of Education. And there they'll hire a superintendent. So the superintendent is like the CAO or like the city manager or like the general manager of those other districts. And the superintendent will have folks in integrated tech, financial services. They'll have a deputy superintendent of business, a deputy superintendent of academic, monitoring, accountability and compliance, district relations, special projects. And you'll see here that the deputy superintendents of business oversee a couple of things: facilities and planning and construction. So these are the buildings of the school district, auxiliary services, human resources, contracts, and instructional facilities. And then the deputy superintendent of academic side will look at area superintendents, student services, instructional support services. In other words, someone managing the kind of day-to-day operations of how the district functions, and then someone overseeing the student services and the academic side. So working with principals, working with the teachers, working with support staff, what we call classified staff, to help get all this kind of organized and done. And what's key here across all four of these examples is that local government is a concept, right? And we operationalize them in these different types of governments, and then we can unpack them further using these organizational charts to really get a sense of, okay, how is this all structured, right? Now you might be saying, this is pretty complicated. Like, I'm a little overwhelmed by seeing all this. Sure, right? But the key is to know that there is a rhyme to the reason. A lot of the time when people think of local government, they kind of are, they might be kind of negative towards it, either because they'll typically completed like a broken street light or the road's not fixed, which are very important things to address. But know that they're very sophisticated operations that require people who are committed to public service, to serving a broader ideal, to working towards a general purpose or a public good. And people are just willing to get things done, knowing that there's rules, regulations, and laws that they have to follow at the local, state, and the federal level. So in addition to these types of local governments, I also want to introduce you to this thing called a LAFCO. Now, I like sharing this because I didn't learn about this until later on in my time when I was learning about government. And when I came across it, I was like, this is pretty interesting. So I wanted to share with you guys here. So LAFCO stands for Local Agency Formation Commission, and they're regional service planning agencies of the state of California. Now, LAFCOs are located in all 58 counties and exercise regulatory and planning powers in step with their prescribed directive to oversee the establishment. I'm going to highlight this term here: oversee the establishment, expansion, governance, and dissolution of local government agencies and their municipal service areas to meet current and future community needs. LAFCOs were established in 1963. So they're a relatively new type of idea, and administer a section of California planning law known as the Cortez-Knox-Hertzberg Local Government Reorganization Act of 2001. Now you might say, okay, why do I want to know about this when thinking about holding local government accountable? Well, it's because this entity is one, I would say, of three entities that oversee local governments. Or I would say, well, three formal ones. You have the voters of local governments, you have LAFCOs, and then you have county civil grand juries. So let's take a look at the San Diego LAFCO website. I'm going to click on that link. So according to the San Diego LAFCO, LAFCOs are responsible under state law to facilitate orderly growth and development in the most efficient manner possible while protecting against premature conversion of agricultural and open spaces in all 58 counties. And the commission met just last month in April. So let's go ahead and take a look at their commission website page. And we'll click on commission meetings. And here I'm going to go and open their full packet agenda. So it's 154 page agenda and meeting materials. And you're like, oh, geez, that's a lot of reading. Yes, it is. And we're not going to read that right now, but I'm just going to walk through the agenda itself. So you'll see here, like it has the logo, what they do, that it's a regular meeting, not a special meeting. This LAFCO, when or what date, where they're meeting, who the chair is, in this case, Jim Desmond, and vice chair is Paul McNamara, and the executive officer is Keen Simmons, and the commission counsel is Holly Watley. And here, the county of San Diego, cities, the city of San Diego, special districts, and general public are all represented. And in this case, this meeting was in a hybrid format, so it looked like they had both face-to-face and people joining on the phone. So here's all the items, like they call to order, which is like, let's open the meeting at 9 a.m. They have a pledge of allegiance, which all local governments do. They have an agenda review. So this is saying, hey, this is what the agenda looks like. So they'll say, there's items 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Does anyone want to pull something from the consent item? So anyone want to take one of these 5A, 5B, 5C for separate discussion and consideration or not? Or do we want to add or rearrange, or do we want to rearrange these? They typically, local governments or LAFCOs won't add things to their agendas because there are state laws requiring notice to the public of what's going to happen at a meeting. And you can't just like say, oh, here was our notice from 3 days ago and we're going to change it right now. That's typically not kosher unless it's an emergency. So we'll have agenda review, then we'll have public comments. So this is where anyone who's attending can say, I want to raise a concern, or I want to make a comment as a member of the public. Most of the times they're asking either, do you have a comment about something on the agenda? Or if they just want to comment about something under the jurisdiction of LAFCO. On occasion, you have people give public comments to local governments when the local government doesn't have any power over the issue. But most of the times people have a pretty good sense of what local governments can or cannot do. So they'll raise concerns that are within the broad scope of the local government's power. Next, you have consent items. And these are things that, or in this case, are considered ministerial or non-substantive and subject to a single motion approval. So all these would get approved under one one motion, saying like, item 5, consent items A, B, C, D, E, F, all approved. Motion, you might have some discussion and then yays and nays, and then they're done. But if somebody wants to have a conversation about it, they can pull the item or they can have a discussion about it. So in this case, they'll have approval of last minutes, ratification of recorded payments proposed. In this case, Weston change of organization, annexation to the Leucadia wastewater district, progress report on work plan projects, authorizing continued hybrid fully teleconference current proposal. So I'm gonna go ahead and have this item 5C read to us because it's a little more substantive than the others. So I'm gonna go ahead and have that right aloud.
N. The Commission will consider a change of organization.
Okay, just need to fix the audio setting.
Organization proposal filed by the Leucadia Wastewater District to annex approximately 13.5 acres of incorporated territory within the district's sphere of influence. The affected territory as submitted involves 3 legal parcels in the city of Encinitas that were previously used for commercial greenhouse operations. The purpose of the proposal is to make public wastewater services available to the affected territory and accommodate a planned 48-unit residential subdivision. Staff recommends conditional approval of the proposal as submitted along with waiving protest proceedings. The subject parcels are identified by the County Assessor's Office as to 16-03-10, -45, and -46. Recommendation to approve.
So you hear that, you might say, okay, what's that about? Well, there's a local government, in this case, the Leucadia Wastewater District, and it wants to annex land within its sphere of influence. So every local government has a sphere of influence. This is like the we'll say the bubble around it. And in the middle of that bubble is the core. This is like the actual limits of any district. So you have the core, and then outside of that is the sphere of influence. And in order for a local government to expand its core into its sphere of influence, it needs to get approval from the LAFCO. So this is what's happening: is the Leucadia wastewater district is wanting to expand its core within its sphere of influence, and it's these specific plots of land that are within the city of Encinitas or around the city of Encinitas. And there has to have been some kind of conversation between the wastewater district and the city of Encinitas to say this is okay. And now they got to go to LAFCO and say, can this be okay to annex this part for the purposes of providing wastewater services to an eventual 48 unit residential subdivision? So the point is, almost every and any action that a government takes doesn't just like happen, in smoke-filled rooms or behind the scenes and this kind of like murky world, like where we don't know what's going on. Like, no, let's just be super clear. Like, if we want to hold local government accountable or any other level of government accountable, we can. And because the information's out there, it's just a matter of caring enough about it, paying attention and raising concerns, and kind of just what we call bird dogging it. You just stay with it until you either get a resolution or they vote and they go against what you want to see happen. And then that's it, right? That's just the nature of public processes and public institutions, right? They do their work in public. In contrast to other organizations like the private sector, where you don't know their organizational structure, you don't know how they're making decisions. They don't have to have a meeting where everyone can come and give a public comment on the works of their inner operations or their sales or, who they're hiring or firing. Like, public institutions have to do that, right? The private sector does not. And so we have that as another example of holding local government accountable. Like, they just can't do anything without approval of LAFCO for these major kind of, I say, jurisdictional questions or issues. Now, you might be asking, so how can I get involved? Right, let's bring this all together. Well, first, find a local government that you're interested in, right? Whether it's your city, a school district, the county, maybe some kind of board or commission that operates at the local level. So there are state boards and commissions that do operate in a regional level. Check out their websites, right? Attend a public meeting and give a public comment. And I've suggested this to students from time to time. Like, they're like, well, what do I say? You know what? Just go introduce yourself. Hi, my name is, I'm a student at Cuyamaca College, or I'm a student in general. I just wanted to attend this meeting to learn more about what you all do, and that's why I'm here. Thank you very much. That's it. And people are like, you can do that? I'm like, yep, you can do that. And that's the one way that I got involved in holding local government accountable. There was a state created regional entity. It was an 8-county region called the California Partnership for the San Joaquin Valley, and they had a meeting at UC Merced, and I just went to it, and it was like an 8-hour meeting, and I sat there the entire time. So they had a public comment, not at the beginning, at the end of the meeting. And all I remember is I was a little warm and it was a little late. People were a little tired. And so like I had my public comment basically saying like, hey, I'm a student here at UC Merced. I can tell everyone's a little tired, so I'm going to crack a joke. So I made some kind of joke, or at least I said I would, but I didn't. So that was the joke. And, I think students should be involved and engaged in the partnership, and I look forward to working with you. And right after I sat down, 2 people approached me. Mike Lynch, who was then the chief of staff to the former mayor of Modesto, and John Garamendi Jr., who was the vice chancellor of university relations for UC Merced. And those blossomed into, in my case, my future internship and my future job with then John Jr.'s dad, John Garamendi Sr., when he was lieutenant governor. So just getting out there and saying hi and paying attention, right? Just one big way to hold the government accountable, because they know that you're now looking, right? That you care about what's going on. And in most parts, they'll appreciate your attendance and your general comment. And then hopefully from there, you start to find things that you can ask about, you can engage with. The best other advice I can give you is don't be too antagonistic or antagonistic at all. Just share with them honestly what you're feeling, what you're concerned about, and that you hope that they can address it. I've been to public meetings and I've seen public meetings where people get very nasty towards public officials. Like it's okay to yell at somebody or to call them names or to say something derogatory about them or their work, or even worse, like some things about their family, like you don't even know. Don't do that, right? If you're going to hold local government accountable, be respectful, be honest with what you're concerned about, and ask that it can be addressed. And just know that you're contributing to this process of making and implementing public policy. So in addition to that, I want to highlight local county civil grand juries. And here's my son Ethan, who's wanting to say hello. So say hi. And when it comes to county civil grand juries, basically there's 58 counties in California, and each of them have a civil grand jury. These are entities established in the state constitution, and every year they come together and they're responsible for conducting investigations of local governments. And so what's on the screen here is a working paper that I wrote a couple years ago now that talks about how civil grand juries have this oversight function and how this is like something very unique, because they basically can get any amount of information from any local government within their county boundaries and then issue reports on it. So one thing that we've done, and I'll wrap up with this, is established here at Cuyamaca College the Civil Grand Jury Lab. And this is a lab focused on original research of California's 58 county civil grand juries. Now you might be asking, well, wait a minute, what's this about? Well, the idea here is to create an opportunities for students at Cuyamaca College to engage in research, data collection, working on educative simulations, and public policies related to grand jury reports to kind of one, give you knowledge, skills, and abilities that will serve you well here at the college and at your transfer institution. And two is to help build your network, because now we've worked very closely with the statewide California Grand Jurors Association, which is a nonprofit that works to support the grand juries across California. And third, it lets you see kind of like, what's this process of conducting research? And for someone who went to community college like myself, not having that kind of in-depth experience, I did have some experience working with my professor, but not having like real in-depth experience. What I want to do here as professor now is to say, hey, let me kind of give you that in-depth experience so that when you do transfer, you're like, okay, I'm ready for being an undergraduate research assistant. I'm ready to continue to work on the research I started at Cuyamaca while I was a student, and overall kind of give you a window into what it means to contribute to our understanding of things. In this case, the civil grand jury system in California, and how it oversees and works to hold local governments accountable through their investigations and through their reports on an annual basis. So I encourage you to check out our website, which is linked in the thing. It's a cgjlab.com, and you can go ahead and learn more. I obviously have a short little video here welcoming you to the lab. And overall, going back to our slides, basically holding local government accountable is difficult because it requires time and attention, just like anything else. But it's very rewarding because it's at the local level, it's down the street, it's where you live, it's where you work, it's where you drive to and from. And essentially, it's your way to make an impact directly on public policy that not only will affect your life directly, but obviously the lives of your neighbors, your community, and the broader place that you call home. So with that, I hope this was informative and kind of give you some structure about how you can engage in this process of holding local governments accountable. And with that, thanks for listening in, and we'll go ahead and jump to our discussion. So take care and have a great evening.